All right. Good evening, everybody. God bless you. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. It is just a minute after 7. I almost made it on time. I was doing a little ripping and running, but thank y'all for continuing to support this channel. I'm David Collins, and this is the channel that is called Broken for This. The intent of this channel is to point some light at some of the more difficult aspects of our lives. And a lot of us, I know not just me, but a lot of us go through some really painful situations. A lot of us have been through experiences that we wish we didn't go through. And sometimes we experience, shame and guilt, or even the fear that because we've been through such horrible things, because we've, because I've said I don't think I could survive if I went through the worst day of my life, and now I don't know if there's any good left in me. Whatever the lie is you're telling yourself about that, Broken for This exists based on the reality that the most difficult things you've been through don't have to define you in a negative way. They can actually equip you to be useful. They can be the thing that has given you the tools that you need so you can help somebody, maybe somebody like you. And I want to be able to speak to offer some encouragement to some people who are like me, some people who've been through some of life's most difficult circumstances, and just empower you to see some good even in those dark and difficult times. So that's what Broken for This is all about. We do a couple of things on Broken for This right now. I don't know what we're going to be doing going forward, but right now, one of the things I do is that I bring on people who have stories that are worth telling. People who've come through some very difficult things, and who can share how they survived those things, and how they're using those experiences to propel them into the next part of their life. So be looking. I think next week I've got one that I'm planning, and I got a few more that a lot of my friends and people who I've interacted with throughout my life. I think their stories are going to be very valuable to you. I hope you've enjoyed the ones we've done so far. And the other thing is what we're doing today, which is my way to tell my own story. If you know me, you know that I'm a pastor of New Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church in Cliveville, Georgia. But I didn't want to use the pulpit at New Mount Zion as my own private confessional. I wanted to create a space where I could be a little more personal about what I'm going through, and not make that, not make that the church's business. You know what I'm saying? So that's what Broken for This is about. And I'm doing a series called Dear Dad, and it's a series of letters that I've been doing as a therapeutic venture. My therapist, Stephanie, and I have been working together for the last few years. And I know now that a lot of the issues that I deal with as an adult stem from my own unresolved issues with my absentee alcoholic biological father. And there's a lot of things that I wish that I'd been able to say to my dad, things that I wish that I had heard from him. But I'm doing they call it in the mental health business, reparenting, where I am looking back on some of those moments and I'm speaking love and life into myself. And as I've been doing that, the way that I decided to kind of do it is through a series of letters. So by the time this series is done, you'll have really come from, I think we started in like 1986. Now we're in 1991 today. But you'll be able to see it'll end up like a memoir, and I intend to publish this as a book when it's all over. So you guys are getting the advance on it. Did one just before Father's Day this year, and this one is called Father Figures. So I've got this letter. I'm going to pull it up. If you're here and you got comments, I'll keep an eye on them. I may not respond to your comments right away. I'll probably do that once I've already read the letter. So once I start reading the letter, I'll read it all the way through. And then I'll give you some of the things I've noticed as I read it, some things that maybe you can glean from it. And then I'll engage with you, the listener, and then we'll get out of here. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get started? If you're watching this on Facebook, I would encourage you to subscribe to the Broken for This YouTube channel. Facebook deletes your videos now after about a month. So all of these will be kept on the Broken for This YouTube channel. So watch it wherever you want to, but just know that after a little while, that video may delete on here. So I want you to still have the opportunity to see it. If you want to share it with friends, I would just encourage you to share the YouTube video so it's still there. All right, let's go into the letter. So let me pull it up here and we'll read it again. This is 1991 and the working title is Father Figures. Dad, as time went on, I slowly became accustomed to the idea that I needed to find a way to make sense of my life without the luxury of your wholehearted effort. I was never really fine with your absence, but it occurred to me that I didn't have much choice. One of the ways I coped was to look to people who were available to me as male mentors. Uncle Dwight, my mom's brother, was an excellent example of that, and he still is. Love you. He's a real man's man, an outdoorsman who was also a gifted teacher. Uncle Dwight used to take us fishing all the time. He lived close to Grandma's house, so we spent lots of time together. He even mentioned you fondly from time to time. Uncle Dwight talked about how funny and cool you are. He told me he nicknamed you Hoyt, and it always made him laugh to say. I laughed along, even though I had no idea how you get Hoyt from Edwin. Still, Uncle Dwight had his own family. He never did anything to push me away, but I think I pulled away from him a bit to save some room for you. My Auntie Vindia married a giant among men, Uncle Leon. He was a non-commissioned officer in the Air Force. His uniform was always impossibly immaculate. His combat boots were always polished to a mirror shine. He often worked out and seemed to excel at any sport he tried. He was happy to bring me along and to nurture my lackluster affinity for sports. Uncle Leon was not only a giant of a man physically, but he had a huge heart. I literally watched him give a young man the shirt off of his back just because the guy said that he liked Uncle Leon's polo. Uncle Leon also loved Jesus Christ with all of his heart. His devotion to serving his community inspired me. We didn't simply go to church either. We spent time with people who were struggling or sick. Grandma loved to cook meals for the sick and shut in at church, and Uncle Leon was always happy to deliver them. He wasn't afraid to be emotional, and I learned from Uncle Leon that real men do cry. We sometimes went out on men's days, we called them. These outings are just the two of us. Still, Uncle Leon moved away sometimes because of his military service. And I also felt a little guilty enjoying my time with Uncle Leon so much. I still wasn't quite ready to give up on you. Mom dated a couple of guys while we lived with Grandma, and I would openly muse to them, the men that she dated, about my hopes that they'd be my new dad. In hindsight, that was probably more than a little jarring for them. I didn't know any better, though. I was just saying how I felt. In 1990, Mom remarried. Her husband's name was Edwin Woods. Grandma joked that she'd only known two men named Edwin in her whole life. My mom married both of them. Mom's father passed away when Kim was little, so I escorted Mom down the aisle at her wedding. I treasured that role, as I felt like I was taking the role of the little man of the family. I think back on it now, and it's so interesting that everybody was okay with the 7-year-old walking his mom down the aisle. Ed was a bit older than Mom. He was retired from the military and had a son who was already out of high school. We really didn't get along that well for most of my childhood, me and my stepdad. Kim and I weren't used to the new rules at his house. Mom was a flight attendant, so she was gone half of the week on trips. And when Mom was away, Kim and I spent as much time as we could with Grandma or with Uncle Leon or Auntie Vindia. I never really considered, though, how that might make Ed feel. I can't imagine it felt that good. Since Ed was my stepfather, I thought he might be able to fill that long, empty void that you left in me. But it just didn't feel quite right. I tried to call him dad a few times, but that was awkward and forced. That was your title, even if you left it unclaimed. Slowly, I started to pull more and more away from Ed, and I eventually cut him out emotionally completely. I don't think he realized it. At least I hope not. It wasn't his fault anyway. I was just hoping he could be something that he wasn't. You. I was too busy being hurt to give him a real chance at a connection. Even though we lived in a new city and new surroundings, I couldn't shake the desire to talk to you. My last name was Collins, but Mom's was Woods now. When people only knew me, they often called Mom and Ed Mr. and Mrs. Collins. That grated on me, served as a reminder that our family required further explanation in order to understand. Ed seemed to take Mom's lead with regard to you. He had no issue with us talking to you whenever you called every blue moon. I could tell sometimes that it bugged him. I mean, we were living with him, but I still had this allegiance to you. You and Ed have similar facial features. And I remember once we were out at Walden Books, someone in the store who Ed knew remarked how much I looked like him. I didn't know what to say, but Ed deflected it deftly and said, "I've been feeding him for so long, I'd hope he looks like me." It was a witty response that allowed us to continue on without any uncomfortable conversation. Ed and I even talked about you sometimes. When I asked him why he thought you didn't want to be around us, he'd just say that you were probably going through some really painful or serious things that we didn't know about. Ultimately, I had more questions than answers. I had Uncle Dwight, Uncle Leon, my stepdad, but I still felt discarded and ill-equipped for life. I couldn't even clearly define what I was missing, so I could apply those negative feelings to anything happening around me. I was bad at sports because I didn't have my dad. I cry a lot because I didn't learn masculinity from you. I was lacking self-confidence because I didn't have my dad to show me how to walk in my manhood. I was constructing a mental prison for myself, brick by brick, and there was nothing I could do about it. Worse still, I didn't want to talk to anyone about it, so that pain intensified and festered. When I finished a grade in school or accomplished anything significant, my mind drifted to where you were and whether I'd be able to share that next accomplishment with you. In hindsight, it really cheapened what would otherwise be some pretty happy times. The older I got, the more I encountered kids who didn't have their birth fathers in their lives, in a way that made me feel a little better. Since I was so resistant to sharing my real feelings of abandonment, I felt totally alone in my pain. I reflexively projected my feelings of inadequacy. It seemed like everyone could see how broken I was, so I overacted. I overcompensated. I cracked jokes when I didn't feel like laughing. When people asked me if something was wrong, I lied and said that it wasn't. It seemed like even other kids who grew up without both parents didn't show any signs that they were suffering like me. Kim and I handled the void you left completely differently too. Where I was stuck searching for you, Kim talked very logically and matter of fact about you. Compared to me, she seemed much more confident about who she was. Kim talked about not needing you to make sense in life. I admired her so much for that, but I couldn't will myself to do it for some reason. She talked about how Uncle Leon and Uncle Dwight meant so much to us. She was absolutely right. All that time, all the same, I couldn't silence the voice within me that wanted to be a part of your life. I also developed a strong prayer life. In church, I learned about how I had God as my heavenly Father. He was with me wherever I went. God knew the extent of my brokenness and loved me anyhow. He knew what it was like to be separated from his children, and I found strength in God. But I wrestled against doubt. God was real to me, but he was invisible. It was hard for me as a child to apply what I knew about God to how I felt about you. It was as if I was stuck at a buffet surrounded by food, but I couldn't eat. I had an omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient God who loved me, but I needed something that I could see. Mom and Dad made sure we had everything we needed and most of what we wanted. I even had a great array of surrogate fathers who clearly wanted to see me healthy, happy, and whole. I knew all of that, but I couldn't enjoy it fully. No matter how good my life was, there was always you. It's like there was a dad-shaped hole in my heart, and nothing else would truly fix it. I needed something so badly, I didn't even know if what I needed existed. Sincerely, David. I'm having some issues with Facebook right now, it says. So if you're on Facebook, forgive me. I'll let me go in here and I'll share the YouTube video so that if anybody would like to, they can join in the discussion. Just in case, let me see here. Share to Facebook. There we go. Good. Okay. So that's the letter, y'all. That's the father figures, the 1991 letter that I've written. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Yeah, Facebook is tripping, y'all. Sorry. So I'm just, I don't see anything in the comments. All right. So I'll just give you my insight about this, some of the stuff that I've talked about with my therapist and going through this. I was talking with somebody early today that when you deal with a reference wound, like an absent parent or any kind of trauma, any kind of feeling of inadequacy, as kids, we find ways to make everything our own fault. And I think I certainly did that with my dad's absence. It wasn't my fault, but when I couldn't understand it and praying for it didn't change anything, it became this thing that I obsessed over. And I was the only thing that I could really figure out. In hindsight, looking back on it now, I realize that that I had made my dad like the disease and the cure at the same time. I had created in my mind this reality that, my dad would fix all the problems that I had, and that anything that was wrong with me was because of his absence. And that if he would just pop back in at some point, that would make everything better. And I think I've probably said before that probably makes sense to a 7-year-old. But, now that I look back on it, and there's still some aspects of that I still struggle with. But I think that it just created that I was dealing with anxiety and depression, at a young age. And instead of really thinking about why I was feeling what I was feeling, Dad was just a convenient place to dump those negative emotions. So I look back now and I realize, and I'm doing that work now in therapy and in my own relationships and in talking to my family members and my friends, that I see that Dad was that it was not just that I was fatally flawed, or even that Dad wasn't there. There were, even if Dad had showed back up, let's think about this, right? If Dad had shown up, especially in the state he was in when he was in active alcoholism, he would have been more destructive than anything. And we'll look at other letters as we go forward that prove that bear that out over and over again. It's not I don't have hostility towards him, just that now that I look back, I realize, he couldn't have fixed. And even if he came back and it was the Hallmark movie ending that I wanted, I still would have been dealing with, what was going on with me. Why was I obsessing over every little thing? Why was I constantly picking myself apart? Why did I feel so broken and inadequate? Why was my mind always running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, playing through the most negative things that I could about myself? That wasn't something that my dad could fix. And in this letter, I pointed out the thing that I look back on now is that even though I expected my dad and I hoped that my dad would show up and fix everything, I really did have a lot of great, thoughtful, godly men in my life that they had their own families, they had their own thing going on, but it wasn't that people were pushing me away. I really do see now that I was pushing other people away. I recognize that for a couple of reasons. One of them was obviously to make room for my dad. I felt like that was something that I just needed to do. I needed to make sure that I still left a little hope for my dad. Stop, Kira. My dog is trying to jump into my chair. But the other thing is, but the other part is that I was in my own head pushing people away who, from what I could tell, really wanted to be there for me. And I look back on a lot of the memories that I have, the positive memories especially, and I know that I was engaging in a lot of self-sabotage. Because I was feeling so insecure. I was filled with so much shame. I was feeling so hurt. I really didn't give myself a chance. I really didn't give myself the opportunity to enjoy some of those things. And I look back on it and I feel a little frustrated with myself, honestly. But the people who are in my life, I don't think they noticed that. And I'm sure that they, and many of them I've talked to. I had a conversation with my stepdad, and he was like, listen, I was never holding it against you. You were a kid making the best that you could of a situation that was really, really difficult to understand. So even in my head where I'm like, he's probably thinking I'm the worst and he wasn't even on that. That was all me. And, I did have, my Uncle Leon, my Uncle Dwight, my Uncle Fred, and others who were there for me, who knew what I was going through. And I think that probably, I don't know. I think that I know that I had a lot of love available to me, but sometimes it's hard to receive that love when you don't see yourself as worthy, or when you think that you've got to hold out on that. You've got to save part of yourself, for somebody who's not even in a position to give you what you think you need from them. The other thing that stood out to me, that I had made my dad the villain and the superhero in my story. The other thing that stood out to me, just looking at my mom's wedding. When my mom got married, I was 7. And, I always was very protective of my mom. I always felt like I needed to, I needed to be there for her. I needed to be strong for her. I needed to protect her. And I think that's why, when the time came to, when my mom and my stepdad were getting married, they were talking about, I remember we were just like talking about who was going to do what in the wedding. And, it would have made sense for me to be like, I don't know, the ring bearer, right? That would have made a whole lot of sense. But I I remember volunteering and saying like, no, I want to walk. Can I walk mom down the aisle? Can I give her away? There it is right there. Um, that's my mom's wedding. Um, and that's a little David and mom, me giving my mom away at her wedding night back in 1990. Um, I think it's an adorable picture. I think it's cool to see, but I also think that it you know it shows um it shows that I was in a strange kind of state of mind that I felt like I needed to, I needed to do that for my mom. There it is again. Felt like I needed to. And I look back on even that, I know it's great pictures, cool conversation piece. But, that was another thing that I was, trying to trying to overcompensate, that I was trying to make sense of things. So, yeah, interesting. Just interesting. Now that I think back to it, one of my nephews, if I was, as I've done a few weddings, I've never seen anybody who's, and they did the whole thing. Who gives this woman away to be married? I was like, I do. I was so proud. They got tux with tails and ruffles. That boy was clean. But, I would probably, if one of my nephews were, her nieces wanted to do something like that, I'd probably be like, you don't need to do that. We got grown folk for that. But I remember being insistent that I do that. When you're dealing with those kind of issues at a young age, you start seeing yourself as someone who's supposed to be able to do more grown things. And just interesting to me in hindsight. Like, wow, what was I doing? How did I get there? So what do I have? I try to do this every letter. To talk to those three groups of people. Talk to the child of a parent who's not present. Talk to the parent who's not present, and talk to the family of that child. So first, to the child, I would just say, if you're looking back on your own childhood, maybe you're younger and you're dealing with some of these things now. I just want you to know you're not alone. You're not the only one who feels like that. Like I said, I was not the only person. Look, I grew up in middle Georgia, but you can grow up anywhere in America and you'll find people who have all kinds of complicated family situations. But for me, it felt like I was the only one. And I just want to tell you, if you're feeling that way, or if you felt that way, you're not the only person who's gone through this. You are not the only one who's felt this way. You're not the only one whose family has gone through divorce or other struggles like that. And the other thing I would say, especially as it relates to father figures and the struggle that I went through with that, you are not, how do I put it? Don't feel like you have to push everybody away. So much of what I went through, I think would have been really, really different if I had spoken up about it. And the other part was that I didn't talk kindly to myself. I didn't know back then what I know now. But if you're finding yourself doing that too, just give yourself some latitude. Don't be so tough on you. And if you've got some people in your life who are there for you, another parent like I had, uncle, stepfather, people who are doing their best to be there for me, don't push that away. Maybe that parent will come around, maybe they will. But in the meantime, your accomplishments are still worthy. They're still good. It's still worthwhile. Even if that one person that you want to see it hadn't seen it yet. Even if they never see it. I wish I had known that the love I got from the people who were there was all I needed. and that it wasn't this asterisk next to my life that was like, yeah, but if dad was here, because that was this imaginary thing I built in my mind. And, I know better now. And I just want to encourage you, if you're, and if you've got those people, cling to them. Cling to the people who love you. Cling to the people who care about you. Don't feel like it's, some kind of you're a hindrance, you're a bother. A lot of us have a whole lot of love to give. I'm sure there are people in my life, but who I would love to be there for, that I just don't know what they need. So don't feel like you got to hold all that in. I was doing that super young, and it's caused me to age quickly. They call you being an old soul, but I really did. I really did carry a lot of burdens that I didn't have to. Not only could I have given them to God, but I had people around me who could have helped share that with me. And I know that as I talked to my sister about it, I look back and I would be like, why are you so flippant about this? This is serious. But the truth was, she was right. I was tripping about stuff that I didn't need to be worried about. And I look back on that now, and I know that to be true. So, that's just something that stands out about me. If you are the family of somebody like me, I think it's especially now, I love that in our society today in America, it is not so strange for a child to go to therapy. In the 80s and 90s, you wasn't going to a shrink. You wasn't going to talk about those kind of issues. A lot of that stuff we just bottled up. But, if you've got a child who's going through something like that, and you don't have the answers, because you might not, you probably don't, don't be ashamed to employ a professional to help you through that situation, and do a few sessions of family therapy and broach some of the topics. One of the things that I loved about going to therapy, and I went as a teenager, I went to therapy for a little while, and it was really helpful. But even then, I was only, I don't know how honest I was when I was going. But it's still better to have someone there to help you. It just, it really encouraged me to know that what I was feeling and experiencing was textbook to somebody. Like, there was somebody who knew the pathology of anxiety and depression, and then they had tools and skills to help me. And I'll talk about that some in subsequent letters. But yeah, don't feel like you gotta have all the answers, or you can just pray the issue away and then just ignore the rest of the time. God has given us a lot of tools. Prayer is one of them. So is a therapist. So is a psychiatrist if you need it. So is, whatever you need. So whatever it is that you got, that, don't write anything off, and if you're the family member of a child who is going through some difficulty like I was, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to say you don't know when they got questions, and to seek out some answers and ask them to have those difficult discussions. Again, late 80s, early 90s, we didn't know what we didn't know. But now we've got a lot more. We're a lot more cognizant of that, of our own mental health struggles in general, mental illness in general. We're at the end of Mental Health Awareness Month in June. So, have the tough conversations, and don't be afraid to, if you don't know, if the conversation is getting out of your area of expertise as a parent, don't be afraid, don't be ashamed to ask somebody to help. Last, if you are the parent of a child, and I say this every time, and I'm probably going to say it every time. If you're the parent of a child and you're not in that child's life for whatever the reason is, I just encourage you to take a look at my story and that at 42, I'm still trying to make sense of conversations I had at 6 and 7 with my dad. And I've supplied answers because he wasn't there to answer them. And if you are doing that, if you are finding yourself, you've given yourself an excuse to not be there for your kids, I want to give you a nudge and tell you the two things. One, whatever the issue is that you think is keeping you away, work on it. Don't blame anybody else for it. You do your work. Get yourself together. You know, my dad spent 25 years or so in active alcoholism. And the answer was not for him to rush back into my life and cause chaos. But I really wish that he had gotten the help that he needed much earlier in his life. And I think that maybe he might have still been here with us. You know, my dad, if you don't know if this is the first one you've seen, you know, eventually he took his own life. I got the phone call on my birthday in 2019. And I wish I could have helped, but I could only do what I could do. I don't want that to be your story either. I don't want you to live your life thinking what would have, could have, should have been. I pray that you'll work on you. And then the other thing, I pray that you'll push past. If that means therapy, if that means AA, if that means NA, if that means anger management, whatever it means. I think that it is that it's a worthy venture to help to answer some of those questions so your child doesn't have to do it by themselves. And then when you've done your work, when you're safe, when your therapist says it's good, when you've worked with the other parent, find a way. There are a lot of kids like me out there. And I don't have the answers for everybody, but I really do encourage you, if you're not in your children's life and it's within your ability to do the work that'll make that more feasible, please do. On behalf of them, they may not even know how to ask. I'm asking. Do your work so that you can be there. That's what I got for y'all today. Let me see what's up next in this series. We're getting close to some really heavy ones. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Got another one that's interesting. I'll be talking in the next letter about how I always assumed that my dad was just, you know, whatever the issue was, he must have just been completely debilitated, beside himself with grief all the time, trash relationships all over the place. And I was actually really hurt when I found out that wasn't the case. So I'll be talking about that. Again, complex feelings, you know, but trying to take care of them. Listen, if you're watching this and you made it this far, again, I don't know what happened with Facebook. There was some kind of issue. I'll repost this on Facebook, so it won't be live, but I'll still go back and check the comments anyway. If you find yourself connecting with this and you want to talk, I'm here for you. Facebook is probably the quickest way to reach me, or email. See Broken for This. It's on the screen. Broken, the number 4 this at gmail.com. Hit me up. Say, hey man, I need to talk. I don't care how old you are. You know, I want to talk. This struck a chord with me, meant something to me, and I want to be able to, you know, I want to come through it. That's what this platform is all about. Yeah, and then the last ask is, if you've come through something difficult in your life and you think that your story is one that somebody else could benefit from, then shoot me an email and maybe we can come on here and have you talk and tell your story. I certainly know that my story isn't universal, but the more of these stories that we share, the more people will be able to reach. And I'm just trying to be the kind of help that I didn't have. I'm trying to speak words that I didn't know how to speak then. So if you want to help me in that work and offer your story, we'll just have a free form conversation about it, um, and offer you the opportunity to tell your own story in your own way. How did you come from? How did you overcome that difficulty, and how have you used that to propel you into wherever you are now? You don't have to be a finished product. You don't have to be don't feel like I don't know if I'm good enough now I don't know if I've accomplished enough just tell your story. And that's what this platform is about. We want to be here to help the survivors of difficult situations, equip their family to help them, and to even help those who are the contributing cause to some of those. I'm here for the absentee parent. I really mean it. I want you to be able to reach out and be there for your kids, so that there are fewer kids growing up like I did with those unanswered questions, feeling broken. All right. Thank y'all so much for being here. And I look forward to keep an eye on my Facebook page and on the Broken for This page. I'll be announcing our next one upcoming. Be praying for me and Ashley also. We got a lot going on health-wise around here. And we could use your prayers and support. All right. You guys have a wonderful day. I say it every time and I mean it. I love you. And there's nothing you can do about it. We'll see you at the next one. Take care, everybody. God bless.